Welcome back, everyone. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here for another explainer. We usually kick things off with a standard agenda, but today we're actually going to skip the formalities and just dive straight in. We are unpacking a seriously suspenseful procedural audit from episode 93 of Office Drama Stories. Now, if you've been keeping up, you know the company just went through this massive public recognition with the memory wall. They supposedly learned to prioritize the truth, but, old corporate habits die hard. And the real danger here isn't some cartoon villain shouting in a boardroom. It's a quiet, seemingly harmless workflow change. The Culture Award celebrated courage. The hidden nomination rewarded silence. I absolutely love this quote, because it sets the stage perfectly for a cinematic corporate cover-up. In toxic workplaces, the true danger doesn't announce itself with a megaphone. It hides in the fine print, right? It hides in the administrative processes that everyone is just too busy to double-check. So we're going to see exactly how a system can be manipulated to reward the complete opposite of what it claims to celebrate. All right, let's get into Section 1, the hidden nomination. After all those dramatic reforms, the next big test for the company actually comes down to an object so small you would almost miss it entirely. On the surface, these details are incredibly mundane. We're talking about a missing signature, an altered metadata field, and a quietly changed owner. But before the rest of the office has even had their morning coffee, strategy lead Maya Carter spots these tiny anomalies in a Culture Award nomination, a nomination that, mysteriously, didn't make it to the company's published shortlist. Maya, along with her team, including Sofia, who's actually new enough to still read the fine print, realized that a record-first culture isn't just a poster in the break room. It requires constant vigilance. Which brings us to this brilliant little insight from Maya Carter. The dangerous documents never look dangerous first. So the absolute crucial point here, and our first big takeaway for anyone navigating corporate life, is that toxic workplace maneuvers disguise themselves as routine, boring paperwork. If you want to spot the real power plays, don't look at the screaming matches. Look at the boring forms that someone desperately hopes you will just gloss over. Moving right along to Section 2, Soft Words, Hard Records. Now, when these anomalies are finally brought to light, the corporate spin machine kicks into high gear. Suddenly, you hear all these soft, reassuring words like alignment and healing. The Culture Office comes out with this highly polished official story claiming the hidden nominations are just normal executive calibration. Sounds incredibly professional, doesn't it? Like nothing to see here. But the audit reality tells a completely different story. We have missing approvals, metadata that has clearly been tampered with, and beneficiaries being deliberately concealed. The polish is literally just there to distract you from the proof. And this quote from Elise Warren, the independent board member, just cuts right through that polish. Closure without memory is just a new cover page. It perfectly highlights why moving on without investigating the root cause is so incredibly dangerous. If you just accept the Culture Office's soft explanation and try to move forward, you aren't fixing a toxic culture, you are just resetting the timer until the very next betrayal. Real closure demands a memory of what went wrong. To fight back against all this spin, Nina, the executive assistant, brings something incredibly powerful to the table: background records. People who manipulate systems often think they're completely invisible. But Nina proves that invisible background work always leaves a foreground footprint. A booked room, a calendar export, a printed draft note. These quiet pieces of data, they capture the truth when people try to hide it. Then we have Jordan, the IT auditor, who takes Nina's background records and maps them onto a raw, unarguable timeline. It goes exactly like this. Minute 1, a user logs in. Minute 15, the core metadata field is quietly changed. Minute 45, the altered route is formally approved. Jordan totally strips away the magic of technology. There's no cinematic hacker sequence here, just the cold, chronological sequence of undeniable facts. What makes this so incredibly powerful is Jordan's mindset. This is not suspicion. This is sequence. Data doesn't care about office politics. It doesn't care about executive feelings or the company's optics. It literally only cares about the timeline. When management tries to say, "Oh, you're just being suspicious," Jordan's response is to simply point to the system logs. Because, well, you just can't argue with a timestamp. Okay, Section 3, the room shrinking question. So now we are right in the belly of the beast, the formal review meeting. Maya and her team have the sequence and the proof, but bringing facts to an executive meeting doesn't mean you automatically win. The executives, particularly Transformation Officer Adrian Vale, try to frame the cover-up as an issue of career advice and business continuity. It turns into this elaborate piece of corporate theater, because a toxic culture doesn't always shout you down. Sometimes it suffocates you with soft verbs and appeals to optics. They desperately try to shift the focus away from concrete facts and onto feelings, basically suggesting that good leaders know when to just drop an issue for the sake of the company's stability. But Maya's response to this pressure is crucial. When Adrian warns her not to turn every inconsistency into a crisis, Maya delivers this absolute powerhouse of the line. Truth is not damage. Hiding it was. She completely refuses to let the company treat the discovery of the truth as the problem. The cover-up itself is the problem. And just as the room is desperately trying to retreat back into feelings and fog, Aisha, the analyst, steps up. She asks the ultimate room-shrinking question that halts the corporate spin dead in its tracks. Who benefits if this stays classified as harmless? That is quite literally the most important question in any workplace dispute. If we sweep this under the rug, who is actually winning? When Maya places the proof right next to the official explanation, the fog completely clears and the name appears. The hidden nominee for the company's Culture Award, an award strictly meant to celebrate courage, was the exact manager who had previously convinced a protected employee not to escalate a complaint. The system was quietly attempting to reward silence and compliance, dressing the whole thing up as moral performance. Unbelievable, right? Which brings us to Section 4, Rewriting the System. True workplace justice isn't about getting revenge or just firing one bad apple. Think about it. If you just remove the person, the system that allowed them to cheat is still sitting there, just waiting for the next person to exploit it. Real resolution is about rewriting the rules. Maya breaks down the systemic repair of the awards process like this. Step 1, you want to nominate someone? You must provide concrete evidence. Step 2, enforce peer visibility so a nomination can't just happen in the shadows. And Step 3, mandate conflict checks before executive calibration. She literally writes a visible control right into the workflow, showing exactly how to protect future employees from falling into the exact same trap. Notice the entire philosophy behind Maya's fix. Do not quietly fix what can publicly teach. A private, behind-closed-doors fix really only serves to protect the executives from embarrassment, while leaving the broader workforce completely exposed. If you fix it quietly, no one learns the lesson. By building the repair into the visible process, the process itself leaves footprints that educate everyone. And finally, Section 5, the ultimate workplace lesson. We've watched Maya and her team dissect this cover-up not with screaming matches, but with quiet, meticulous auditing. So what does this all mean for you in your own corporate career? Well, a repaired workplace isn't one without conflict. Conflict is inevitable. Human nature pretty much guarantees it. A truly safe, repaired workplace is one where conflict must leave a record. Surviving toxic office politics isn't about trying to be a vocal, fearless hero every single day. It's about being incredibly meticulous. Keep a record, because the truth shouldn't need a hero's permission to appear. I really want you to soak in this recurring theme from the source material. The record did not raise its voice. It simply waited for someone patient enough to read it. Think about the gravity of that systemic truth for a second. You don't have to shout to prove you're right. You just need to have the patience to let the data, the logs, and the background records do the talking for you. Which leaves us with a final provocative thought. As Sofia asks at the end of the episode, does it ever end? The reality is, probably not. Toxic habits are always going to try to creep back in through loopholes and policy exceptions. But ask yourself this. How can you use your own records, your emails, your meeting notes, your timestamps, to make it vastly harder for the wrong people to start over? Start thinking like Maya Carter. Protect your digital footprint, trust the sequence, and let the record do its job. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and keep learning.